This is apropos. The attacks mark a significant escalation against the Syrian interim government as days of clashes threaten to unravel the country's post-war political transition. Israel has tonight launched further airstrikes on Damascus hours after government officials and Druze leaders announced a renewed truce following days of clashes. War monitors say more than 300 people have been killed. Israel is presenting itself as a defender of the Druze, but some analysts say that's a pretext for pursuing its own goal of keeping Syrian government forces from their shared border, as Eliza Herbert explains.
Dozens of Israeli Druze have breached the border into Syria, crossing the demarcation line in the Israeli-annexed Golan Heights. In the chaos, violence broke out, fires started, and the IDF deployed tear gas towards the crowds. Israeli Druze community leaders had called on them to pressure Israeli forces to intervene in the deadly sectarian clashes in Syria's southern city of Sueda. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has told them to go home and let the IDF do its job.
My fellow Israeli Druze citizens, the situation in Sueda, the situation in southern Syria is very serious. The IDF is operating, the Air Force is operating, other forces are operating. We are working to save the Druze community and to eliminate the terrorist threats. And now I have one request of you. You are citizens of Israel. Do not cross the border.
On Wednesday, the Israeli army demonstrated its heavy hand. It bombed the Syrian regime's military headquarters and said it struck a target near the presidential palace in Damascus. It also released footage claiming to show strikes on Syrian tanks, rocket launchers and pickup trucks. Israel's defence minister suggested they may just be getting started.
The warnings in Damascus have ended. Now painful blows will come. The IDF will continue to operate forcefully in Sueda to destroy the forces that attacked the Druze until their complete withdrawal.
Druze are a small religious minority estimated to have more than 1 million people in Syria, Lebanon, Jordan and Israel, where there is a concentration of some 150,000, with many serving in the Israeli army. However, the IDF operations in Syria also align with its broader goals of securing its northern border and demilitarising the area south of Damascus.
Well, for more, we're joined now by Nanar Hawach, Senior Analyst for Syria at the International Crisis Group. Nanar, thanks so much for being with us on the programme. We heard a short time ago the Syrian army saying that it had begun withdrawing its forces from Sueda. Just talk to us a little bit about, what has been happening there, how exactly we have gotten to this point, and just remind us why the Druze community has been resisting government efforts to take control of that area.
Thank you for having me. I think one way to describe what was happening is a local spark that led to a regional fire. Basically, there was a local intercommunal dispute that is relatively likely to happen in an environment like post-Assad Syria, where there's a lot of grievances and a very destroyed country. And this intercommunal dispute was to a certain extent exploited by Damascus to try to assert control in the southern area of Sueda. The government's intervention was seen as a power grab by the Druze in Syria, not really as a peacekeeping mission. This approach backfired on the government. It escalated the conflict which drew Israeli airstrikes. Now, speaking of Israel, Israel didn't hold back on seizing the opportunity that was presented by Damascus's power grab attempt in the south. Publicly, Israel framed what was happening, or framed its actions as protecting the Druze community, but strategically and in reality, it reflects Israel's aims at keeping Syria fragmented and weak, especially in the south. It's what Israel is doing the last couple of days. It's a clear signal to Damascus against consolidating power in the south. I would add that the government inadvertently pushed a Syrian community closer to Israel. And this brings me to your second question. When the new authorities took control, they over-relied, and they have been over-relying on the use of force, on the use of coercion, which kind of alienated different communities that don't see themselves aligned with the new authorities. The Druze are including these communities, and the over-reliance on the use of force actually played in the hands of any warmongering actor or any actor that wants to antagonize the Syrian state, and it undermined any actor that wants to use the kind of the peace building approach, or want to take the peace building approach. So the government's, as I said, like power grab attempts played in the hands of the factions of the players within the Druze community that want to take the more armed way against the state, and it increased tremendously the feeling of existential threat among the Druze, creating increasing the popularity of these groups that want to that are really against the state, and undermining the groups that want to open up relations with the state and want to unify the country.
And how then has this Israeli intervention complicated the situation? Do these strikes risk spilling over into another wider regional conflict?
It's difficult seeing these strikes expanding to different regional conflict and drawing in different nations. But I would say the mere intervention of Israel means that, or like what the change in the dynamics that are happening in the south, unfortunately means that we're going to be seeing more, not less, Israeli intervention. Israel right now is going to play more of an active role in the south, and this role is not going to be to push for a unified Syria, unfortunately. It also means that the escalation derailed the ongoing talks between Syria and Israel that would have been extremely important for stabilizing the country. So will this conflict kind of draw more actors? I highly doubt it will, especially there's heavy US mediation going on right now to de-escalate the situation. But what happened today, will it have negative effects or snowballing effects or domino effects on different dynamics in Syria? Unfortunately, I would say it will. It will have, it's sending a message that to different actors, including the Syrian Democratic Forces, the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces, that your only way of leverage is the arms that you have. And that's problematic, especially since the biggest problem right now, or one of the biggest issues in a highly problematic country, is the lack of trust.
And we heard earlier from our correspondent in Jerusalem talking about how people in Israel today, when they see these hundreds of people, of Druze coming in, trying to get across the border into Israel, that's reminding them of the Hamas attacks of October 7th. What kind of a threat does Syria actually pose to the Israeli military? And are these strikes not making it more likely that Israel is going to have, a volatile state as its neighbor, a more volatile state?
Definitely spot on, really. It's not in, we don't see that it's in Israel's best interest to have a weak and fragmented state. A more kind of capable, unified state is beneficial for Israelis' security. It means you have a more secured state where there's less space for radicalism. That's very true. So will we see more more insecurity in the south? We could. Will we see more or some movements in the south that could try to come at Israel to a smaller extent because there's not really capable movement? Maybe. I would say the best thing for the region is to have a unified Syria, to have a stable Syria, to have a country, a state, a government that has a capable army, a functional security. And it's also very beneficial, including for the Syrian government, to have a representative entities, especially within the army and the security sector, which makes this or undermines or lowers this level of fragmentation within the country. And it's very important so Syria doesn't go into different cycles of violence over and over and over again. I mean, the last cycle of violence was several months ago, it wasn't too long ago. So when is the next cycle of violence? And I think there's going to be a lot of new cycles of violence if there's no significant change in Syria, unfortunately.
Yeah, because you point out that the recent clashes that we've seen in Syria, they derailed talks that had been taking place with Israel. So what kind of longer term implications might we see here?
When it comes to the relations between the Syrian state and Israel, I would say it got negatively affected. Now the question remains, will Israel follow a different approach than normalizing with the Syrian government, an approach that relies on building something, building a semi-autonomous force in Syria and pushing more into fragmentation? Will it feed or try to play on these existential fears that different communities have? That's going to be a problem if Israel decides to do that. Or will Israel decides to go on a different path? And the question again, we can't take the responsibility from the government. That is the main internal actor in Syria. Will the Syrian government continue to rely on the use of coercive, the use of force only as a method? Will it continue to centralize or over-centralize governance to be especially within the security, to be only representing one segment of the Syrian population? That's going to lead to different issues. That's going to create a fertile ground for any warmongering actor or any actor that wants to undermine the Syrian state to try to undermine the Syrian state. This applies in all the, I would say, in most of the peripheries. You have from Sueda to northeast to the coast. So the Syrian government needs to re-examine its approach. Israel needs to also re-examine its approach and focus on helping build a more unified and a stable country, because it's beneficial for its own security and the security of the region as well.
Nanar,
because
so much.
I'm going to end by saying that ISIS thrives on insecurity and power vacuums.
Nanar, thanks so much for being with us. That is Nanar Hawach, Senior Analyst for Syria at the International Crisis Group.